outside of the board reporting? Don't think there is. But I can see. No, that's cool. So now we'll go to 7.12. So we'll welcome Bill and Andrew. And so that's on page 162. Thanks, team. I'll let you introduce the paper.
Yep, thank you, Your Worship and councillors. So this project, of course, was a key project in the last long-term plan, and it was subject to a lot of community consultation. It was more about the timing of the project, and more than rather than the actual scope of the project. So, but since that time, things have moved on a little bit. There are a few changes, and the major changes that the stadium, in fact, has been deemed an earthquake-prone building. That, and of course, has introduced quite a significant cost to upgrade it, which it needs to be added in. The construction of a new stadium, we've been in discussions with contractors, and really, on a greenfield site, it's likely that the new stadium, as long as it's kept to a pretty simple no-frills building, is going to be more cost effective than trying to actually retrofit an existing stadium and do the add-on. So this is where the proposals come forward. We need a decision of what you'd like to do. Is it a new stadium? Is it carry on as originally planned and do an extension? The timing is quite critical with this because it impacts on a number of sporting codes. As you've just heard from the public forum, you've got the users of the stadium at the moment, basketball, netball, those sports, but hockey is also impacted. If you'd elect to go with an extension, then they have to look at a new turf because the extension is proposed to go over that turf. So it is quite important, the timing. We are planning to construct in accordance with the LTP in 2025, and it's also important that basically the sports only have some surety well in advance of a loss of a particular season. So that's very important there as well. So that's why the 2025 is selected and works on that basis. So moving back from that, we need a decision basically soon so we can start initiating contracts, design, etc. Just a couple other points I need to make is that the community were originally consulted on an extension to a stadium. If you elect to do a new stadium, it is important that you probably go out to consultation again on that option. And that is planned, should the decision be made for a new one, and it would be done in parallel with the LTP. It can't really be part of the LTP because of that timing issue, that we need a decision before the LTP is adopted effectively. Remember, this is already an approved project. The existing stadium, of course, is owned by the Aorangi Stadium Trust. So any, decision relating to alteration of that stadium, demolition of that stadium will have to be made by the trust. And the operations of the stadium, of course, is under the Community Services group. So they are running that. The reason that we're involved, Bill and I are involved, is because the Aorangi Stadium Park is in fact under the recreational reserve, and we manage, the number of sporting activities within that reserve. So the stadium falls under our wing at this stage. So. Bill, do you have anything to add?
No, I think just reiterating the fact of the users and the way forward. We've heard that hockey is impacted. Can they go ahead and start planning for renewing their turf? Netball, what is their situation? If they build, they might lose the season. Just having clarity around where we're going would be helpful for those and to get the project moving.
Brilliant. Thank you, team. Questions for Bill or Andrew? Councillor Pinnington.
Just for a bit of background for fellow councillors, it's been about a 3-year journey. The group that came and spoke have looked at a couple of new stadiums in Selwyn, and Waimak, we've been to Ashburton. The group individually have been to Invercargill and all round, but probably the driving factor in Christchurch is the new Netzel Stadium being built at Punawai that we could copy. Basically, it's 8 or 10 courts, a couple of changing rooms, really basic, but totally focused on sport, and we can deliver it within the long-term planned budget. So that's why we've landed where we're landed at the moment.
Councillor Jackson.
What about those extra facilities that they require, office facilities, et cetera, et cetera? Where does that sort of sit in the budget?
I can talk to that. So the netball pavilion, we're currently looking at fitting that out as an administration hub. So we're looking at options, netball is, at how to share. Yep, so all sports would go into that kind of facility because we need, you know, I've always been a big believer that we need to utilise that asset. So the idea is that we would use that as the sports hub, storage, meeting room facility. Yeah, so we will look to optimise the netball pavilion for that. But also within that current footprint, there is meeting rooms within it. That is not as basic, I think, as Stu sort of just outlaid. It is actually, you know, it is still a fully functioning environment.
So it's more than just a shed?
Definitely more than just a shed, yeah.
Just one thing I will point out is that the new stadium proposed, there's no gymnasium, for instance. There's no cafeteria. But yes, that is correct. There is offices, reception area, and some meeting rooms, but not quite the extended number of meeting rooms that the current stadium has.
Councillor Shannon.
I got a look from the outside and in the lobby of the new stadium at Napunawai on Saturday, and the first thing that struck me was this wasn't here last summer. That does make a big difference clearly to all of the sporting codes that it would do here in South Canterbury as to how quickly that could be done. And from what I'm looking at, for example, if you're looking at option 1, for half the price of seismic strengthening and what have you of the existing thing. Excuse me. The other thing that really impressed me, and it was Abby, it was you that impressed me the most when you sat here actually. Talked about your enthusiasm and keenness as an organisation to do what you needed to do to help get something across the line. And that's one of the things that I think that stands out here and would be important to me is that the different codes that utilise the space, that they use their army of people, because you do have an army of people. 6,000 people is ridiculous. And I know that's across all codes, but that's 5,000 families? I don't know. So it touches so many families and lives in South Canterbury. And again, what you said, Abby, makes me think that we'd have an army of people that would help us to get there. I very much like the idea of what I saw in Christchurch, to put it that way. That when you walk into the reception area, it was lovely. It was a lovely space, but the sheer number of playing spaces on the inside was very, very impressive. Thank you.
Councillor Oliver.
Just a quick question, Andrew. Will there be a provision in the build for potentially solar panels in the future?
I can't answer that entirely. It's something that could be considered as part of the design build. Of course, you put solar panels on a roof, you need a stronger roof, so it comes at a cost.
Good question, Councillor Oliver. You've come our green councillor, haven't you? No, good question. Further questions, Councillor Booth.
What sort of outside participation will we have potentially towards the fundraising side of it? Are we going to set a target of, like, say, like 25% or something?
It's in the it is in the program. The original decision was up to 2.3, and that'll probably be across what other things are happening. Anyway, Councillor Piddington, you might be able to speak to that.
Well, I haven't finished
Yeah,
yet.
look, we were hoping to do about 10%. Netball and basketball are totally committed, and there's other sports, and they've got a lot of firepower. It's hard to go out and sell it, Alan, when we haven't got anything. As soon as we get the nod and a design, that team that spoke will be right behind us.
Yes, and what sort of income could you expect to generate as well? Do they pay a sub or anything?
Yeah, we'll be charging them court hire at a reasonable amount so all those kids can come and play. But better to talk to Andrew or someone about the return. I don't know. We haven't quite got down to that detail because we haven't decided how many courts.
It is a interesting point because we have been criticised about not having business cases for a variety of facilities. So
When we charge netball, we have there's three already fees in there. So you've got Netball New Zealand, you've got mainland netball, and then we have a Netball South Canterbury fee. And every year when you set your fees, you know what you're going to hire the stadium for and what that costs are. So when the council sets their rate, we factor that into the team cost. So, you know, the idea, if I take that hat off, and it's a community asset, and so the more people that can utilise it and use it for different experiences, it will generate its own income. So we just need to use it. That's the key thing. And I think basketball think they're going to take over and use the whole thing all the time. Would that be still here?
What I can tell you, Alan, it'll be ahead of the theatre, the art gallery, the swimming pool. It's user pays.
yeah, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, councillors. I think we've got three deadlines clashing here that are all coming on us at once. One is getting our new long-term plan out, and we've got some challenges with that, so we're going to have to work that through. The second one is the need of our sports in the community, so we've got to work that through. And also, it feels to me if we move from the current stadium to a 10-court stadium, we will need to revise, as one of the speakers spoke, how we manage that facility and therefore what costs and also what revenue comes with that facility. And I think those three things all need to be worked up, probably in tandem, so they come together at the end with this is what it looks like. So there's a bit of work to do over the next few months to actually get that sorted, in my view. While it's in the current long-term plan, life's changed, and life does change as you go on, and we're going to have to stand back and actually make sure that we can reset this and reformat. The stadium in Canterbury they built, I mean, it's a breath of fresh air because it might help us to actually pull back some of our costs as well. So I think we've got three pieces of work we've got to get done, and they probably all need to be done sort of simultaneously.
Councillor Pye.
That kind of leads into one of my first questions I had was, what are we actually agreeing to here? Because if we agree to go ahead with this, you know, we've already had conversations this morning about how we have to slash our capital spend, and I'm not saying I'm not for this project because I'm 100% for it, but then we get to our long-term plan and then we go, well, we can't afford to do everything, and they go, oh, but you've already said yes to that, so you have to do that, and it limits our options in the long-term plan, and that worries me a little bit, that we're, again, same as last week and same as the week before, asked to make a decision in isolation of the long-term plan. I know timing is imperative here, but that does concern me. Then I have some other questions. Shall I fire ahead with them? Or?
Yeah, keep going.
So just wondered, with the cost of the stadium's 14 million, with an additional 7 million of surrounding site work such as car parks and stormwater retention, does that include the demolition of the existing stadium? Who's going to pay for that? It's owned by the trust, but they don't have any money.
The 14 million plus the 7 was what the Netball Stadium cost. So they, of course, didn't have demolition. We would have to have that. So you're talking about, 14, 21 million. Our budget is 28 million. So what I'm saying is that your demolition can be accommodated within the current budget.
Then, I think Councillor Jackson asked this before, but if hockey are saying that they need additional facilities, even a boundary fence and things like that, and they'll be looking to council for that, have we factored that into our budgets?
We have factored in a small contribution towards hockey and their facilities, but it's not a huge amount of money.
Just one final question, so I'm 100% clear. So existing stadium owned by the trust, that'll just get demolished, wound up, and the trust will disappear, and the new stadium's to be owned by council. Is that the plan?
That is the proposal, but yet to be confirmed.
Subject to the, oh, sorry. I'd like to move
Then I'll
option
come back
one.
to Councillor Jackson. Oh, Councillor Jackson, thanks.
Look, there's a huge amount to like about this project, no doubt about it. And I think that, we owe it to our youth to provide them with facilities such as what is being proposed here. We're already in the community having people say there's not enough for young people to do, and here is a great option for them. It's healthy, it's good for them, great for social connections and all that sort of stuff. And one of the things I really like about this too is the fact that these people are incredibly passionate, probably not quite as passionate as basketball was, but which was very, very passionate, and that was fantastic to see. And that's what it's about. It's about, your backbone of those people who are going to be out there raising the money being incredibly passionate, as we found out with the playground. So, you do need people who are prepared to drive it, and I like the fact that they want to raise 2.3 million. I think it's fantastic. But I also, a bit like Councillor Pye, have a few concerns about that long-term plan. Now, we have been in conversation over the past few weeks about the pressure that long-term plan is coming under. So just how do we, because I know that there's a need to move this quickly, so how do we do that and keep the long-term plan in consideration, because there are other projects out there as well that also deserve our recognition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Are you okay? We'll go to Councillor Scott.
I think we need to move this project to public consultation. That is what is being asked for. We've made very clear that we need to move it out there. This is a slight variation to the long-term plan. You've got to give this project the opportunity to go back out and consult. So then the rest of this work, as Nigel Traynor said, is so then we can gather our community consultation, firm up the business case, which we are a long way down the track, I might add, and align it with the LTP. But we've got to go back out to the public. If we don't do that step now, it will be 2026, and I do not support that.
Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Plenton, did you move the recommendation? I would be very happy to second the recommendation. Fully supportive of this. I think that the team has done a great job of looking out of the box, looking at different options, definitely ready to go out for public consultation and move forward. Yeah.
Councillor Booth.
Just one final question. The facility has been used as a banquet facility in the past for the young farmers, etc., and I presume it'll be demolished. I assume that the new facility wouldn't really be up to that standard where you need to actually have a something sort of semi-decent. So what is that? That's obviously something else to consider. That's but I am in support of the option one.
The main challenges in viewing the Netzel Stadium with Councillor Piddington that I see is probably beams and sight lines, and ideally it would be great if there was a full wall in the middle of the two rather than, so you could have sport on one side and something on the other, but they're workable. The challenge with that, currently if you use the Netzel design, and we will need to use that facility for events that are away from sport, you wouldn't be able to have sport and an event. So maybe there's some challenges in whether it can be designed, but I'm expecting that it'll add millions probably to be able to design it, because effectively you're designing one side slightly different than the other, and it's not my level of expertise, so I won't even comment any further. But it is, we just have to understand how far you want to go down that track to allow, or do you, when you've got an event on, can it not be used at all? Question for me. We did on the last decision, we had considerations for the older users of the gym, and I think the thinking at the time was to move them to the downstairs at netball. Obviously, that's now thinking around that's now office space, etc.? What was the thinking around the gym for the 50-plus age group?
There is a space underneath at the moment where they use as storage, which would make a perfect gym for about 50 people.
Perfect. Councillor Jackson.
Don't we already have enough gyms in this region? I'm sure we do. If you talk to some of the gym operators out there at the moment, they would all agree that we don't need another gym in town.
I will direct any questions on that direct to you, Councillor Jackson. Be careful what you wish for. Okay, we're getting some movement. Obviously, to the issue that's been highlighted, we've got 45 mil, talking about debt, 45 mil plus 13 mil of infrastructure in and around the theatre. You've got 28 mil here, so that's 86 over a 3-year period without consideration of other capital expenditure items. So that's where we're at. So there will have to be some probably decisions made around anything else that sits in there that's not the highest priority, basically. So I would say there'll be a lot of things that will have to be pulled from the current capital program. So we've got a mover and a seconder. Does anyone want to speak against the motion? No? Okay, so the motion is Council endorses the proposal to build a new stadium, option 1, within the area currently used for the netball courts at Arangi Park and undertakes further community proposal. Any further conversation? No. I'll put the motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. There we go. Unanimous decision. Well done. Move now to... thanks, team. Appreciate that. Thanks for everyone coming in and showing your interest, and also to the officers involved. We'll go now to...
Sorry, Mayor Nigel, just Sean Campbell did make the offer of opening the stadium. Can someone have a look at that for
Yes.
over the January period, and whether we can staff it in some way over the weekends?
Oh, for the current stadium?
Yep.
Yep. Can you recall that as an action? Brilliant. Done. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move now to actions register 7.1 on page 6. I'll move the actions register. Councillor Booth, you happy to second that? We'll just go through, make sure everything's okay there. We had the workshop at the airport, delegations manual. We're all set. We're already seeing some reporting coming through. That's done. Stadium and budget reallocation trial. That's all good. So Councillor Booth seconded that. I'll put the motion out. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Common seal. Can I have a mover for that, please? Councillor Jackson. Councillor Booth, thank you. I'll put the motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. We've got 7.3, which is release of public excluded reports. That's on page 11. Is there any questions in regard to those PX reports? So it's Russell Square and Meadows Road. Yes, Councillor Booth.
We had a meeting around the theatre. It was publicly excluded. Were we going to release that or what?
Yes, no, so we've, I welcome Mr Cooper. So have we put a press release out going out tomorrow morning in regard to that, Councillor Booth? Mr Cooper.
So does that mean the minutes will be released as well?
No, we've got a press release, but we would have to decide on what's being released from that at this point in time, so it won't be a full release. Yeah, so it was the recommendation was the resolution at this stage, so it will in the future. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So any questions in regard to those two items? No. If not, can I have a move for those? Councillor Jackson. I go this side. Councillor Shannon. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. 7.4 is TDHL annual report. Welcome, Mark and Fraser. And welcome, Mr Cooper. Thanks, team. Pass to you.
Worship, Councillors, Mr Chief Executive. Thank you for having us today. I'll just touch on points in the covenant paper. TDHL met the statutory timeframes in regards to submission of its annual report. We received an unmodified report. The audited annual report and accompanying financial statements were presented at the annual general meeting. The year-end results are in line with the progress and forecasts that were reported to Council on a quarterly basis, and the service level highlights were also presented to Council on the 17th of October. So we don't have anything to add in addition to the financials or management report, but are happy to take further questions to those. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mr Rogers. Questions? Councillor Pye.
I don't have any questions on the annual report because I've been through that previously, but for me, Nigel, where are we at with, you know what I'm going to ask, the letter of expectations? Because we talked about it, we drafted it, we were supposed to have a subcommittee that finalised that, but I don't think we've ever finalised that.
No, we do have a draft, and in regard to TDHL and work in progress, because we need that by SOI's due March, isn't it? So letter of expectations will have to...
Draft is 1st of March.
Yeah, it's 1st of March. So we had a discussion just the other day in regard to that for both the CCOs, CCTO. Yeah, perfect. Any further questions for Mark and Fraser? No, can I have a mover for that? I know you're pretty up to date. Thank you, Councillor Booth and Councillor Oliver. I'll put the motion now. Those in favour, please say aye. Brilliant, thank you. And then we'll go now to the quarterly report, which is more up to date. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you very much. This is very much a business as usual report for the first quarter. We have a year-to-date operating surplus of 68,000, which is a heavy budget, primarily due to the higher operating profit, lower budgeted interest costs. We continue to engage with key stakeholders, continuing work on the property portfolio, and we'd just like to note that it's the 10-year anniversary of the Port of Tauranga and our Prime Port joint venture as well. And happy to take questions on the report.
Fantastic. Questions in regard to the quarterly report? Councillor Booth.
More of a general one. The Bay of Plenty, is it? The council have suggested they may sell their stake, which is 53%. Potentially they are the owners or controlling shareholder of our interests. I'm not sure, is that anything to talk about or be concerned about?
I know Quayside have signalled they're going to look at selling down their holding, but it's Port of Tauranga that I guess our relationship with is primarily, so it doesn't have any direct implications or effect on us.
We'll keep a watching brief on it, Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Pye.
I just had a question on the interest income, which is quite a lot higher than the budget, which was 0 for the whole year. So I just wondered what is happening there.
That's just primarily interest on the cash that we're holding, and
Not anticipating holding that cash, and that's why we had 0 in the budget.
no, we weren't anticipating holding that cash.
We were anticipating allocating cash to debt at budget time, so it's a allocation issue.
Cool. Any further questions, team? No, if not, I'm happy to move that. Second it. Councillor Scott. Brilliant, thank you. I'll put the motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Against. Great. Awesome, team. Thank you. We really appreciate that. And thanks for the workshop last week. Alrighty. Welcome to the VT team. Tony. Welcome, Tony. So same goes. So we've got the annual report, which you'll be aware of with the AGMs, and then the quarterly report. So I'll pass to you, Tony, if you want to add anything more for the annual report?
No, I haven't got much to add, Your Worship, Mayor, and I just wanted to show our support and looking forward to working with the new CE, Nigel. So add another Nigel to the long list, but and just an apology from Nigel Davenport, Nigel Davenport, who's got another appointment out of town. So just take the report as read and open to any questions.
All good. Councillor Pye.
This is not a question for you, Tony, but I wondered, in the council officers report, I just wondered if you wanted to make a correction to number 3, which suggests that Bay Hill Development Limited donated some money to Venture Timaru, which I assume is just an error. It talks about other funding sources include central government, Bay Hill Development Limited and Aotearoa.
That's generated within the council, isn't it?
It's in the council reports, it's on page 50. I assume it's just an error, but I just wouldn't want that to be in concrete going forward if it's not actually the case.
What page is that, Councillor Pye? It was...
It's on page 50.3, the first 3.1.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
I don't have any knowledge of that. I'd ask my colleague Andrea maybe to step forward. Do you have any knowledge of the 990? Is that what you're asking, Councillor Pye?
No, I assume it's a mistake and it should just say other funding sources include central government, and I'm not sure because I can't imagine you get money. Oh, maybe there's money from Aotearoa Māori Culture, but definitely not from Bay Hill Development, and if it was, there would need to be a conflict registered, and I can't imagine Councillor Booth donating money to Venture Timaru.
I actually think, because I looked through there as well, I actually think it's with regard to car parking.
Yeah, it's a payment.
It's not a funding source to Venture Timaru, is it?
Not directly, no.
Yeah, it should be an expense is the way it's recorded. I think it's recorded back. So we'll just note that there's likely to be an error. Okay, righto, let's get back on track. But order team, good pick up. I did have a question though, as far as reporting, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, and it's always been in there, Tony, so this isn't actually judgment at all, but we have non-financial performance indicator results, you know, GDP contribution, unemployment rate, housing affordability, some of those sort of things, and they're reporting, but they're not specifically performance indicators of VT, if you know what I mean. So it's good that they come through because we don't see the information otherwise. But my just question is how they should be reported, because they're not something you can influence to some extent. I don't know if the board's given any thinking around that.
We haven't spoken about it directly, but I think it would be appropriate for the council and VT to get together and actually set some KPIs and then report to those KPIs accordingly. So I think should be a work in progress from now on.
I agree. I think that's great move forward. Thanks, Mr. Howie. Any further questions, team? If not, I'm here to move that. Councillor Parker, seconder. Stay there, Tony. We've got the quarterly result as well. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. And then so we have the quarterly report. We'll present that as read, but is there any questions in regard to the quarterly report for Mr. Howie? That's on page 77. Yep, go for it.
Just on page 80, you talk about the cruise seasons, and you talk about last season's expenses were met approximately 50-50 by VT and Primeport. However, we are seeking support of up to $40,000 towards the cruise season costs from the council's economic development fund. So, I'm still learning. So how does that work? Is this your request in this paper, or do you go and put another request in somewhere else, or is that part of the normal annual economic development fund money we give you already?
Welcome if Councillor Scott and Booth want to chip in here, but my understanding is that the port does fund some of the operational costs of that, particularly the buses, but not all of the costs that we incur. So last year, my understanding was it was unbudgeted because we weren't expecting the cruise ships to come in, and this year, with the vast increase in those visits, it's just taking a lot more resource within Venture Timaru to be able to accommodate that, and that's why we've requested those extra funding.
If I may, so what, you talked about buses, but what kind of costs do you incur when a cruise ship comes in? Because I've been down there, I see there's a lot of extra time for your employees, but what other costs are there?
I thought it was mainly employee cost. I don't know there's much else, but maybe Councillor Booth can answer better.
There's donations to Lions. There is. We've got a list that we can send out.
Yeah,
Councillor Booth, go for it.
There is a fund, an economic development fund account, which hasn't got any money, but it's got $200,000 in it. So I guess that's what.
I can speak that. Venture Timaru's made an application to that fund, which is $200,000, which sits there, of $40,000 to pay for guides, volunteers, and other related costs of ensuring that those visitors to Timaru are getting a good experience as they want to come here. So it's in terms of the experience of those pensioners.
Just for my understanding, so who decides how those funds are allocated? Does that come through, is that just a council officer's decision, or does that come back through one of the standing committees or something?
No, it gets paid on invoice. So effectively, in a perfect world, we would have run it through the Economic Development Fund as far as the requests back through council. And just with the changeover, it's got missed. It sits under delegated authority for the Chief Executive, and what's been agreed is up to 40 or whatever the number is. I think it might be slightly higher, but it would be invoiced in 2 lots, so we are aware of the costs. Last time, Venture Timaru had surplus funds in, in the reserve fund, and those funds aren't there this time around, so it is our share. But we don't know what that's exactly going to be because Prime Port do pick up a bit as well. So it's just to make sure that they're not short and that the allowance is there, up to a set figure. Yeah, the thing with the Economic Development Fund though, it's we use it, we've got to replace it, so we do have to rate for it each time. So what we need to think about, and this will be a conversation with VT for the next seasons, is what does that cost look like as far as the next seasons moving forward. Yeah, so we don't have to come to the fund as such.
I just see on the next page then there's another request for another 25,000, and I just, it's kind of good to get the whole picture. It's not just the annual fund that we're giving VT, we're also giving some other funds as they request them throughout the year, aren't we?
And those will come to council. Yeah, this one just needed to be moved forward because of the cruise season was upon us, and it was meant to hit the 12th, but we just didn't quite make it as far as those other questions of council for the Economic Development Fund, so they'll come back the first meeting in the new year. Is that fair, Mr Cooper?
Through your worship, yes, that's correct. We were going to use that delegated authority for the 40,000 and then come back to council and report what we'd done and that the request had been made retrospectively. But we will be back with that full information at the next meeting.
And the other 2 requests are not related to cruise ships, they're for other programs.
Oh no, I think that's a carryover. No, that's right, I had a question but I've answered it myself. Councillor Piddington.
Just with the major event funding, we've got a bulk lot and we have the names of the successful participants. I think it'd be handy to know how much each of them got, where our money's actually going.
I don't have that information in front of me, but I can get that to you. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not worried, but next time it'll be good to see what each of those organisations are going, and perhaps a history. Have they had it for 3 years? You know, just a column to give us an idea of who's getting what and how often.
Yeah, I think, Councillor Piddington, we might just request action for them to put it into the calendar to share with us, but maybe in the next sort of 3 months we could just have a workshop on that for an update, because I think it'll be interesting from VT. Yeah, so another couple of actions. Any further questions? Yeah, Councillor Shannon.
Actually, just if we're going to come back with a workshop to present some more stuff to us, I'd love to know some more about, the report, read the district's contribution to GDP and what have you. I forget the name of that report.
Oh, yeah.
What your planned next steps are going to be.
Yeah, and I think I've written a note, we can pick that up with some of the conversations around letter of expectations, feeding into SOIs and have a good chat with the CCO chairs to work that through. Yeah, cool, perfect. Any further questions? Otherwise, can I have a mover for that? Yeah, Councillor Booth, brilliant, thank you. Councillor Pye, put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thanks, Tony, appreciate that. We'll catch you later in the week. Move now to 7.8, which is the cemetery bylaw amendment decisions, and that's on page 88. And I welcome Brendan. Welcome, Brendan, and Bill.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, councillors. The purpose of this report is to provide council with an update on the consultation on the cemeteries bylaw amendment proposal, and to hopefully enable council to make a decision on whether to amend that relevant clause or not. I'll take the report mainly as read, but I just want to acknowledge at the outset a couple of people in groups. Firstly, the Working Together group, who did a lot of work to get to advocate for this proposed change and get us to this point. Steph Ford and the policy team, who's unable to be with us today, and also Bronwyn Larkins, a former senior policy advisor who'd done some work on this. So it's important to acknowledge those three. Also, I just want to touch on the most salient aspects of the report before opening up to any comment and questions. On the 17th of October, Council agreed to consult with the community on a potential change to the clause around natural burials. The intention there was to increase the flexibility of what was defined as a natural burial, to remedy a potential current wrong, and to also assist those in terms of having a clause that reflects the diversity of the community. We received, as a result of the consultation that Council approved, 17 submissions, 100% of which were in favour, and 0% obviously opposed. The submissions were useful to us as officers. They contained some useful suggestions in terms of clarifying things such as what signage may or may not be permitted, as well as ensuring, for example, that shrouds and coverings may also be permitted, or that be confirmed in the wording. So as such, officers, because those suggestions are in line with the intention and spirit of the original proposal, amended the proposed wording accordingly, and the history of that is reflected in clauses 9 through 11 in the report, so you can see how that sort of evolved over time from the current wording through to what Council agreed to consult on, through to what the recommendation is today. So ultimately, Council has two options in terms of this report. The first is to approve amending the wording to what is in the recommendation. We see that provides benefit in terms of to groups that are currently affected, cultures, faiths, who currently at the moment, for a number of reasons, are not able to bury their loved ones within the district. And we've identified no disadvantages with that proposed wording amendment. The second option is to retain the status quo. We conversely have identified no additional advantage of that, and there's a disadvantage that we perceive in that it doesn't relieve the impact on those that are currently experiencing the negative effects of the current wording, and it doesn't reflect the diversity of groups, faiths, cultures within the district. I'll pause at that point to see if Bill or Andrew want to make any comment.
I think a historical situation of how we got to where we are when the bylaw was developed, we had made provision for natural burials, and at that time the request we'd had was for planting a tree or a shrub on top of the gravesite, and it was talking about natural caskets. We've obviously moved on with greater diversity and options available, and so that is what has led to this situation.
Brilliant. Any questions? Councillor Shannon.
Just a quick one, actually. I'm still just, incidentally, well done on this process. This is one of the quickest things I've seen move through council since we had the first reading. I'm still not 100% clear on the rules around the headstones. As I read this, notwithstanding this discretion, officers would not permit headstones or memorial-esque structures that are common features of standard grave sites. Has that been resolved? And if not, it just seems odd that you allowed them on anything other than a natural burial.
So what we've got here is the other change is within this we're allowed a beam with just a little plaque on the beam, and for example, as seen in section 13, there's an example of what could, so that's a marker. There's a number of ways of marking different graves, which if you were doing a planted area as one extreme, sometimes it's just a GPS marker or a book of memories or something like that. Within natural areas, it usually doesn't accommodate a headstone unless there is a natural burial within a normal part of the cemetery.
So if a natural burial can still happen within the regular part of the cemetery and then a headstone would be okay. Okay, thank you. That's a clarification I was after.
Brilliant. Any further questions? Councillor Booth.
I've just sort of Googled it, and it would appear that it's only, females are only allowed to go it's like blokes only and no females. So, it's one thing, I'm not sure where I'm going with that, but that's in our day and age, I think that's a little bit, but I guess if that's...
I have to sincerely apologise, I actually didn't hear the question. Do you mind repeating it? It wasn't a question? Okay.
I think we might be safer not. Google can get you into trouble. Alrighty, any further questions? Good piece of work. Thanks to the policy team. This is good stuff. And going to provide some pretty meaningful results for the Muslim community. So, thanks to all the work across parks and policy. I'm happy to move that. Councillor Shannon, happy to second that. We'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Brilliant. Thanks, team. Thank you. So we welcome John Lydiard now up for, we've got 3 items, 7.9 through to 7.11 for the Stadium Trust. Thanks, John. Just give us a brief update and we'll...
Thank you, Your Worship, councillors. There are 3 in quick succession. so if you'll give me permission just to follow through all three of them, and then there may be some questions, particularly on the last one. So my apologies for the 2022-23 half-year report. With so much going on with the annual report and within the context of the Orangi Stadium, we didn't deliver this to council within the timeframe that we should have done. So now we're catching up, and my apologies for that. And this year we will be on time with our December report, but that's very much a pro forma report now, because obviously it's been superseded by the full year annual report, which is item 7.10. And you'll see there that the trust very much ran as a business as usual, on a business as usual basis, as so much discussion was going on about the future. One particular point was that we held off on significant maintenance expenditure, because clearly if we're going to demolish the building, we don't want to do more than is absolutely necessary. However, it was noted in the meeting of the trustees that approved this report that we still need to ensure we have adequate health and safety and structural maintenance, so we will be working on the basis that we will do that, and cosmetic type maintenance probably will not be, will be what we'll be sacrificing. So I think that most of those reports are fairly straightforward in and of themselves. And then the third one, which is the statement of intent, clearly the statement of intent is on an assumption that the trust continues, and we know that there is some discussion about what the future will look like, but for now we've constructed this on the basis that the trust and the stadium continue as is, and we can adjust this as necessary depending on circumstances. So, Your Worship, any questions, I'd be welcome to answer them.
Brilliant, thank you. Any questions on performance in your report and or statement of intent? And then we'll just go back through and move them separately. No. Aside, no. No, all pretty good. Okay, we'll go back and move them separately. So you've got 7.9 on 97 is the Trust half-year report catch-up. I'm happy to move that. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Jackson. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Full-year report. Councillor Booth, you're happy to move that. Councillor Oliver. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Statement of intent. Councillor Piddington, thank you. Councillor Pye, thank you. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. That was easy. Thanks, John. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. We move now. We did 7.12, the sports stadium options. Move now to 7.13, which is airport upgrade update. And we've got Stanley and we've got Mr. Dixon. Welcome. And that is on page 169. Right. And go for it, Mr.
Thank you,
Dixon.
Your Worship and councillors. This airport terminal upgrade is actually an approved project in the current annual plan. And as officers, we are tasked to deliver the capital program that has been approved. So this is part of the, I guess, the step to doing that. Councillors, of course, you do have the option to look at deferring this project if you feel that is a need. But what we're doing is putting up, I guess, what we were planning to do in the first place. So there are options and there are risks with this one, that I'll point out. So we have had a meeting with Air New Zealand. Some of the councillors were there. New aircraft will be required, and there is definitely the Q300 aircraft that is used here coming into Timaru is nearing the end of its design life, and there's no further parts for them basically, so they're having to cannibalise other aircraft. So hence the number of aircraft of these is declining. Air New Zealand have indicated that they will, if a Q300 is not available, they will use the next size up, which is the ATR aircraft. But at the current runway length at the moment, they will not be able to fully load that aircraft. So It would be used purely as a fill-in for the Q300 and carry up to 50 passengers. The terminal upgrade is really looking at in the future. It's looking at the potential of larger aircraft servicing Timaru. You know, the current loadings are up in the high 70s. It's good loadings, and Air New Zealand was quite impressed by that. The other thing is too that we are aware that government is talking about aviation security. At the moment, it's not required for inter-regional flights where basically an ATR aircraft or a Q300 aircraft is not required to go through aviation screening. But as Air New Zealand pointed out at our meeting, it will only take one incident and they will run it in. The issue for Timaru is that in the current terminal, we don't have space for that. And so part of this upgrade is to create that space to future-proof Timaru as an airport for any New Zealand service. Any questions? Stan, do you have anything to add?
Nothing to add there.
We'll go Councillor Parker, Councillor Jackson, then we'll go across the table.
Thank you. I wasn't at the meeting at the airport, I acknowledge that, but from some feedback I've received from fellow councillors, I understand that the impression that a scheduled flight services could be lost with the status quo was not what they received from Air New Zealand. I'm just wondering whether you stand by that option 4 as it states.
I guess there's a number of circumstances that add, back that option. In fact, if Air New Zealand did use a larger aircraft and fully loaded it, then we would be non-compliant with the number of people in the terminal. So that creates an issue for us. And and as I pointed out before, if aviation security was required, then if we did not provide that service, did not provide that area, Air New Zealand would not be able to fly into Timaru.
Just to follow up, if I may. With the aviation security also, one would expect that we would have a lead-in time for that?
We may do, we may not. It's said if there was a serious incident out there, it could be implemented quite quickly. There are a lot of unknowns in this, and this project is really about future-proofing and building resilience into the Timaru Airport.
We'll go Councillor Jackson, then we'll come over to Councillor Piddington.
Being one of the councillors that did go to that meeting out at the airport, I had a sense that the Air New Zealand team were happy with the way that we were performing, but there didn't really seem to be much of a sense of increasing services anytime soon. Which then leads me on to another part of that question, which is, if we don't go ahead with the airport extension and the renovations to the terminal, what sort of impact is that going to have on us economically, access-wise, to this market? Have you done any sort of study on that at all?
Well, the master plan, which is attached to this report, is indicating that basically, yes, it meets our needs at the current point in time. It will not allow future growth in regard to more passengers on a larger aircraft. Now, there is the alternative of perhaps another service coming in at a different time of the day, and ideally that would be what we'd want, because it just, increased number of flights is a lot better than simply having a larger aircraft, So it is, it could be okay.
Yeah, I think our considerations were, I think there was a will to increase their service, wasn't there, certainly in the weekend, and then to look at that increase of scheduling during the week, but it's more 50-seaters as opposed to, and the resiliency is a short term with their ATR until whatever replacement looks like, but not likely to be a larger craft again. So, I mean, this is a question around risk, really. When we want this to land in a timely fashion for the increased, security and that will come at some point. We just don't know what that lead lead time looks like. I'll go now to Councillor Piddington and then I think I'll come back across to Councillor.
Look, I'd be all over this, but Air New Zealand actually let me down when we went to that meeting. They have no intention of changing the fleet for 6 or 7 years, apart from one increased flight at the weekend. They didn't see any increase there. So the stress the capital budget is under and what we're planning, I think this should just be pushed down the road a wee bit, because yes, an event might happen, but there are 4 other airports like us without screening. At a push, we could have passengers only in the terminal, and that would allow probably to jimmy some screening while we get there. So I just don't think there's a rush to do this in any way, shape or form. And Air New Zealand basically said, no pressure from us, it's up to you guys. So I can't see with the other priorities we have that this should be in the mix quite yet, should be looked 5 or 6 years out.
Councillor Booth.
Yeah, probably with Councillor Piddington, I was quite surprised the fact they haven't got a plan in regards to the replacement of their current plane. They sort of said, well, actually we'll carry on with it. This is after they told us they couldn't get any parts for them, and they were flogging parts of another one parked at another airfield to keep them going. And they're going to repower them with hydrogen and perhaps some batteries as well. So, and that was their plan. So, quite frankly, I come away, they've got no idea, quite frankly. They should have a vision and a plan going forward. I looked at in regional Australia, they've all moved to those Embraer jets, just small ones. And that's what they're doing their regional fleet with now. So, I just think it's not good. And just every second person I talk to at the moment, the flights are cancelled. So, that's the first problem. They need to improve their reliability, and they haven't got a plan for it.
Well, they do have a plan. You were there, weren't you? Were you there? Yeah. No, well, they did. They presented a plan for that. So, look, I mean, the challenge, and we're not experts in aviation, but I'm sure a fleet renewal isn't just an overnight decision, and with, changing fuel sources, et cetera, in that sector, and with the ambition to be, championing decarbonisation, I'm sure they're probably waiting to see what technologies evolve to some extent. So, in end of life, they still have 7 years of life in this asset, and they're going to use it. I don't think we're experts, but the decision for us today is, and I might just try and help steer this a little bit. Obviously, we're at a large capital program, so what I'm suggesting as an alternate motion is that we could approve this in principle, but it's relative to our capital program, and so it's a decision. So we wouldn't want to see tenders for design services called at this point, because it would be incurring costs, but we approve it in principle, subject to approval of our capital program. So we need to see where that's going to land effectively. Councillor Shannon.
Yeah, and along with that, perhaps a bit more detail around the business case, because there may be things within that program that are worthwhile doing sooner rather than later, like your lighting.
There's
like that.
Lots of interesting stuff sitting in there.
But I'd be happy to move, as you say.
On that note, did you want to, or we can follow up on that, because my question, I guess, is there anything that we can do as far as our capital, such as lighting, that would improve reliability of the service, or is that a no? What's your thinking, team? No.
Not in that way.
No.
No, it won't.
No, perfect. Good answer. Everyone comfortable with change motion? So proven principle relative to our capital program. Along those lines. It's the recommendation on page 1. It is option, where are we? It's option one effectively, isn't it?
Just for clarification, this is an approved project in the current budget, so are we deferring that project to be considered as part of the long-term plan? Is that where we're heading?
So where the numbers land currently,
There's $2.7 million
In this
the
year.
current budget, yeah.
Personally, I think we have to defer at least a year. Yeah, to the LTP, yeah, I think your point's correct.
Just seeking that clarification.
No, so it's, because it's going to end up being a carryover if we can't move, let you know to move ahead on design tenders, so it will be, So is everyone comfortable with that? Yeah, could you read that back, just so roughly? Approve option one in principle relative to the capital program, and it would be deferring current year spend to future years. Yeah, cool. I'm here to move that. Councillor Shannon, you were seconder. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, team. Appreciate that, and thanks for the tour last week. That was really informative. Move now 7.14 on page 183. And Parks, Andrew, thank you for staying, and Bill, welcome in regard to Parks Review.
Right, thank you. So the Parks have undertaken basically a Section 17A review, which is a requirement under the Local Government Act, triggered on a 6-yearly basis or upon expiry of major contract. Our Parks contracts are all expiring in June next year, so this is the prompt of the Section 17A, and this is about reviewing how we deliver the service. There are options, of course, on the spectrum. On a continuum, you can do everything in-house versus everything contracted out. And it's how you deliver. And there is, of course, different scenarios in between. So we have commissioned an independent consultant, Rationale Consultants, to review the model of how we deliver the service. Looking at the variety of services that we do provide within parks, we have basically reserves which require a bit of mowing versus our premier parks and our, I guess, gardens of national significance, being the Botanical Gardens and this Trevor Griffiths Rose Garden. So there is various standards required. So they have made a recommendation, which is about a mixed model. We are presenting this to council with the request that we then proceed with doing some costings and business cases around the models or the preferred model option. Bill, do you want to?
Thank you, Your Worship. There is a range of activities. We undertake work for other council units as well. There's the Land Transport Unit, which funds street trees and mowings on roadsides and gardens. We've now taken over mowing of outdoor swimming pools. So it is broader than just parks, so it's open space as well. There was quite a good process involved in reviewing this, in which we spoke to other local authorities, our own contractors, and contractors from elsewhere around the country. And through that process, the option of a hybrid model of bringing in-house some of the high-profile garden maintenance was the preferred option. With any of these options, there are risks. And at the moment, one of the biggest risks that our current contractors are facing, and we would probably face, is the availability of personnel. We have struggled probably the last couple of years, and our contractors have struggled to fully staff the complement needed to produce this service. And in the current environment, we may struggle too. But that's not a reason not to do anything. We have to go forward and hopefully be positive and see what we can do to improve that. But there were the 5 options listed under section 5 that were considered, and we're really seeking some guidance on what councils feel is for the way forward. Which options should we develop further cost and bring back?
Thank you. Well, you've come to the right place for guidance. Look, and I would just argue slightly around the driver for the 17A review. I know it's ended up in 6 years, but I mean, it started 2 years ago with a conversation, with deadheaders, and I agree that, the level of service, which we all had issues with, through that COVID period, but we still haven't, picked up. And overall, it feels like there's a team of people that move from one area to another, and when they get there, they do a great job. But as you can see recently, roundabouts, I know the tracks through the, through the Senate Reserve again are overgrown and, need to be done by Christmas. I don't know if they've got capacity, and that we're just chasing our tail. And I agree that the contractor market, or the labour market is tough. But I'm at the point I'd rather us be in charge of our own destiny rather than, getting excuses that the contractors can't deliver. I mean, at the moment, there's absolutely no excuse because there's a labour market sitting out there, university students struggling to find work that could easily be working in this space. And I would have thought with the seasonal nature and growth that they would have been jumping to get some of these people, but it doesn't appear that model is supported. I get the reality of some of these contracts. Most of them, I think you've done a great job that they line up with that 30th of June, 1st of July, and there's a few outside of that, but not major. But I look at this and I think there's, 3.9 mil, I think, of OPEX sitting in there to deliver this, and that's a significant amount of staff plus overhead cost that could easily allow us to move this inside. So my thinking on this, and I'll let someone else talk in a minute, but this has been a driver for me. This is a great opportunity to experiment on what in-house services look like. If certain players move out of the market, it's an easy one to enter at a small level, but there's not a lot of actual competition out there. You've really got Cord that are likely to have, monopoly, control the market moving forward. I know I've sent to all of you the Christchurch report. I have had good conversations with my compatriot in Christchurch around their move to bring it in-house, and it was around cost savings, it was around increased delivery of service. And although I agree with a lot of the stuff in the report, a lot has changed since we started this report. Although it's dated November, we had an early iteration of it, where not a lot has changed. So I'm certainly, as far as what we need to do, bring next steps would be at the very least a full in-house model, cost that up, what that looks like it, and maybe as a secondary, the hybrid model. But I don't actually think a hybrid model is going to service our needs, mainly because all the mowing and all those sort of things still sits out there, and that's the reactionary stuff that we don't have control of at the moment. So for us to actually dial up the level of service, which I don't think we're hitting at the moment, we need a bold change. I'll go to Councillor Jackson, then I'll come over this side.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I tend to agree. I think our levels of service are not as high as they should be. Certainly the feedback that I've had from ratepayers over the year that I've been a councillor has been one that we seem to be slipping. more often than not. And there are some highlights, don't get me wrong. I think the Botanic Gardens are looking fantastic. I think the Trevor Griffith Rose Garden looks incredible. I think you've done a fantastic job down at the playground as well. But I think just overall, the standards are slipping. I'm just curious, though, as to if we were to go in-house, how that would impact on those companies who are currently doing work for us and how that might be perceived in the community.
I think you'd have to ask those companies, and you'd probably have to ask people out there, but our job is to get optimum delivery of a service. So it's interesting, and let's not go into this in too much detail, but they're in a market whereby being reliant on council contracts comes with a level of risk. And, it's no different than government contracts whereby they're 3 years. Most of our contracts are 3 years. That's why the waste contract, as an example, is longer, so they can have that level of investment in CapEx and what have you. So, yeah, it is just risk sitting in these markets. We'll go now to Councillor Piddington and then Councillor Booth.
I'm quite happy to look at it, but I wonder whether we should also be looking at maybe our holding company operates the commercial entity. Handy that you're here, Mark. Look, I just think it is something that could sit with a holding company rather than council and loading up. And I'm also cautious of the asset cost of building up. While we might save on, operations, there is that capital costs. And my third thing that does my head in actually is level of service. So they refund us, Andrew, if they're not performing, or do they just bank the money and don't do the job?
So we have in our contracts the ability to, and we have charged them, so if they're, say this grass is too long and it goes on for a month, we can say that 1/12 of this area might be a hectare. We deduct that from the contract, as well as affecting their track record when it comes to renewals.
Ever deducted from any contractor?
Yes, several times.
The issue is they are struggling with resources. So yes, we can flog them and penalise them, but if they don't have the resources to deliver, it's not happening. So yeah, but we do those deductions. Yeah.
But that's my point, Andrew. If they don't have the resources to deliver, yet we're paying for the full service, it seems ridiculous.
Well, we do deduct from that for the lack of service.
I'll go to the Chief Executive and then I'll come back over to Councillor Booth.
I think on this one, on page 190 of the external report, it does say further investigation is required to fully understand the cost requirements and enable council to make an informed decision. So I think the Worship, the Mayor is probably right. We probably need to stand back and actually go out and look at what would it really cost us to do this. And not just a mixed model, but also if we did the lot. And then we've got to bring that back because we've got to go with our eyes wide open. Also, at this stage, it would be about doing our own parks and reserves maintenance, not commercial at this stage. Whether that goes into a CCO can be another decision at some point. But I think Andrew's right. There will be risks with this that we need to actually spell out, but there's also potentially benefits. So we need to do that and bring that back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Traynor. Councillor Booth.
Yeah, I read the report and I sort of tended to agree with the recommendation from the report saying suggesting option 2. So basically from hand mowing up, or should I say hand mowing, to doing the flower beds, etc. So in regards to a capital outlay and putting your foot into the pond, if you like, it's a nice, easy, safe way that you could actually start to build your capability as a provider and So therefore, do what they recommend, but then obviously as you're developing your group of people and your infrastructure, which will be initially probably some maximum probably hand mowing tools, some trimming stuff, and obviously flower bed capability, so some utes and some people, and as you gain confidence, and then you could look to go to the next step, which would be the full in-house. But I think a hybrid model initially would be a safe a route for the council to just dip their toe in and actually build that capability over time.
Thanks, Councillor Booth. Councillor Pye, then Councillor Shannon.
Thanks. I'm supportive of that too. I think we need to have a look at this. I've probably got a couple of concerns. It sounds like the biggest issues are people and the cost and availability, and I don't see how we're going to be any different there, which is a bit of a concern. And the only other thing I'd say is I'd like to definitely look at the hybrid model, but I'd also like to look at a change in level of service and what that would look like under that hybrid model. You know, we talked before about do we need 3 different sets of flowers and the roundabouts in a year, and, you know, perhaps if we had something, you know, and how we can save money even further. So not just a hybrid model like for like with what we've got now, but also a hybrid model with a different level of service so we can save even more costs.
Councillor Shannon.
Yeah, I agree with both Councillor Booth and Councillor Pye. However, I struggle to support any of it other than, I suppose, investigating further, which is per point number 3 in the recommendation, because there's no costs in here whatsoever. The assumptions, they seem correct, of course. Everything makes sense, but there's no costings, and the consultant that actually makes good sense in his report didn't provide any financial analysis either. And I know the people in this room are very, very hot on looking at the figures, so I'd like to see the figures, please.
Thank you. Anyone that hasn't spoken on this that would like to? No. Yeah, Councillor.
Sorry, I think for me too, I think one of the issues that why it's been bought is because of the service delivery that we have, so we need to better manage that. So I'd like to think that people are listening to this conversation and they're on high alert, that they're being watched, that they need to up their game, and obviously we do too, just internally to manage that. But I think I'd be a bit worried if we went gung-ho and went straight in-house. I think we do need a mixed model as well, and 100% we need to know what the costs are. You know, what is the initial set-up costs, you know, recruitment of staff, and, you know, that good old ongoing costs. But, yeah, hopefully we can get on top of what we probably consider a poor delivery at this stage. Yeah.
Yeah, so a hybrid model only fixes half your problem, and that's what started with the Rose Garden and some of those things. And the other problem still exists with a hybrid model. But what I'm going to move and propose is that 1, we receive the report. 2, we note Rationale's recommendation. 3, we request further investigation to cost of delivering a mixed in-house model and outsourced model relative to the status quo and a fully in-house model. So we've got the 2 to make comparison with. And then that takes in 4. Yeah. So that would be my recommendation. So we've got 2 happy to second that, Councillor Jackson. So that's investigating both in-house and hybrid. So what I want to wrap around this is timelines, and I'm conscious that some of these contracts end on 30th of June, and I'm 100% confident that we can, where there's a will, turn this around in a timely fashion. So keen to understand before we move forward what resources, what requirements might be needed so we can make this happen. So some consideration can be to get this in place by the 1st of July 2024. And I know there'll be some in the room thinking that's too soon, but I think where there's a will, there's a way, and we can do it. Councillor Booth.
This probably goes back, if you want to be that quick, the idea to do it in a hybrid way, because all you'll need to do is actually do the gardening side of things, and then you can work towards the mowing side. That's where your big capital expense is, getting that equipment. So it's a two-step, and if you want to go that far. So I think you could stand something up quite quickly if it was just what they're recommending here, stage 1 if you like,
Yeah.
and possibly stage 2.
Yeah, no, totally, and we'll investigate that, yeah.
Point 19, Andrew, in your report, other considerations, and that's that the 16 contracts are consolidated. Is that at a later date, or did you need?
No, it doesn't need to be done at this
Doesn't?
stage. It would need consideration about March. Yeah. No, so that's why it does, and to the point where it might seem like it's moving fast, but this is 2 years to get to this point, so it's the year of action next year, isn't it? So maybe we leave that offline for the Chief Executive to work with the team on how that might happen. So those 3 recommendations are up there. As I said, I was the mover, Councillor Jackson was the seconder. Any further discussion? No. Oh, Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, we're lucky our level of service out in Geralding's really good. We've got a local guy that does it. And it's he works for Cord, and he's got a guy that helps out there, but he uses that model. He doesn't do any mowing. He does minimal mowing, just the edges and around the tight stuff, and all the mowing gets contracted in and stuff. And it seems to be a really good model because it gives them time to spend time on all those other things to keep Geraldine looking beautiful.
Yeah, but the
And it would be interesting, I would assume that we have some knowledge of the staffing that are in these businesses supporting the needs of council as far as a base on what we need. Yeah, okay, so I'll put the motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, really appreciate that. It's good wherever we get to. I think that's good that we're moving forward. Yes. Yeah, so, yeah, and then, yes, and then across. Yeah. Perfect, no worries. Okay, exciting stuff. We should put this as up front, actually, shouldn't we? We should always consider numbers first, but that's all right. Welcome to the finance team. No. Awesome. Thank you. So 3 monthly performance report. And who wants to lead in?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, we're just presenting the quarterly report. There's some highlights and lowlights and a little bit of discussion. I think the financials, you've already received those figures, and I'll let, if there are any further questions around the financials, we'll let Andrea's team talk to those. Yeah, we'll take the report as read, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Brilliant. Councillor Piddington, thank you.
Mr Dixon, did we find out why there was such a dramatic loss at the gate of the waste centre? We about 600,000 short.
Sorry, what was the loss of?
Sorry,
Are we talking about
computer's just frozen. I'm trying to look over Councillor Pye's eyes. It was the downturn on our estimate, our budgeted for waste across the Weybridge.
But this is year to date, which
year to date.
Year to date, yeah. So the reason for that is that this is the Peel Forest landfill, where the waste is getting dug out of there and moved to Redruth. That will come over the gate and will be charged. So that's what that $600,000 is, and of course that project just hasn't happened yet.
So that's not a multiplier. We're not going to lose $2.4 million for the year. I couldn't.
Yeah, that's the challenge. It doesn't. The expenses are still sitting there, and no revenue. So I guess the question is, what is the remedy?
We'll have to do some more investigation into that, but yeah, there has been a downturn a bit in waste, so the less going over the weighbridge. But yeah, I think we can come back to you on that one.
Yeah, no, that's all good. I've got a note to just sort of request a further in-depth investigation into that from...
Yeah, it was 513,000, so I mean, it's not insignificant if we multiply it out over 4 quarters.
No, 100%. It's going to contribute to Councillor Booth's whole at the end of the financial. Councillor Pye, were you... No, Councillor Shannon, thank you.
Yeah, just a general quick question really across the business. Finance revenue aside, that obviously looks good in these times of high interest. Fees and charges, generally speaking, and other revenue, they're light. Is that a trend or a pattern we need to worry about, or is that a timing issue? Something we need to think about and address?
The fees and charges can be a bit lumpy. For example, dog registrations all tend to come in the first couple of months. And then there are other things that do affect that. It is up and down through the year. We are having to chase a little bit more than we have in the past, but that we've attributed that to the cost of living crisis, and we are chasing a few fees and charges, but it shouldn't be affecting it as much to be hugely impactful on what you see.
Andrew, can I ask you, how does that compare against previous year? Are we following a pattern here, or is it a trend we should be concerned about?
So essentially, we had reported on page 215 that September results included a full reforecast, and it doesn't. These are the numbers that we took to commercial and strategy on the 14th of November. So we can do some work and model what it looks like at the end of December. The plan is to then do a reforecast for the next 6 months, and then we'll be able to see whether or not it's online. So, you know, fees and charges, September last year was 4.8 million versus 4.9 million this year. So there's potentially a phasing of the budget that's not quite lined up. Yeah.
An example there is the water charges, for instance. It's driven by industry, and particularly around the meat processing side of things, which is, of course, generally through the summer period. So it's not linear.
Councillor Pennington, yep.
Just one of the things, and it does flow through a bit every time when we get these quarterly reports, and I don't know how easy or otherwise it is in terms of paying, but we've got, 100K charges not come in for Seabay because we closed the pool for 2 weeks for regular maintenance. If we know it's every August, why have we got it in the budget that we'll receive those fees and charges? Surely that 100K comes out and then there's no variance.
So going forward, we'll work on that process. The reason that this year we hadn't looked at those phases was we were finishing the annual report, the annual plan was happening, we were moving on to the next year. So there is plans to phase it. Similarly with the dividend revenue that we receive from TDHL, we do only get that in one tranche. So it's those kind of things that going forward will be certainly looked at.
It's only because it saves you time and we don't look
agree.
alarmed because
Totally.
something hasn't happened because it was never going to happen.
Yeah, agree, yes.
Awesome, thanks, Councillor Pennington. No, Councillor Booth. No, you don't have to talk if you've got nothing. Over here, I don't want to miss anyone out. A couple of things from me. I just see some damage to the toilets at Pariora. Might be a question for Nicole. There's some consideration around those. Do we understand the use of those, etc.? Just because toilets have been a conversation around what's in the budget. Probably just need to give some thinking around smart spending, but I'm sure we are. Just wanted to acknowledge the work that Diane has done, Nicole, in your space with property. increase some of the tenancy in our social housing for housing or community housing. So it's really good, and she's doing a great job in that. Had an update at a housing meeting earlier this week, which was really positive. Just want to acknowledge See Play finally done. Thank you to all those, both council, internal and external, that were involved in that great community project, and I'm sure some around this table will be happy to see that behind them. And finally, a question actually was on roading service requests. Are we closing the loop? And I know we've had some of those discussions previously. I think there was a number, so I don't have it in front of me, but we were closing it within, or we were fixing the issue within a certain amount of days, which was 42%, something like that. But are we closing the loop? Because that was one of my pet hates, is that we're not going back to the customer.
Well, yes, we are closing the loop as well as we can at this stage. Yeah, I'm not saying that we get everybody, but certainly there's been a huge improvement in that area, and yeah, we've got additional resource dedicated to that task now.
Perfect, that's great. And so it appears that with finance costs, they're coming back in line a little bit. Finance combination between the deficits that was in expenses versus revenue. Do we still anticipate there being a hole? Because I guess some of these things that we've talked about, whether it's waste, whether it's finance, have we underestimated? And obviously that's a moving beast as far as, but we're not likely to take a whole lot more debt before in the next 6 months, are we? It's not going to be massive.
We're hoping not to take debt,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
So that'll fall out of the forecast again at the December, which will then lead into the long-term plan as well.
Yeah. But are you comfortable with the direction that it's moving? It seems to coming back in line.
But it appears that there was budgeted on 3.62, and we're paying higher.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. But it seems to be there was a correction from the last one slightly. It was a bigger hole than it is now. I think it's, or maybe, no, still the same hole.
These results were the commercial and strategy.
Yeah.
So there's been no update since that point.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe I'm thinking, okay, no, that might be my mind going the wrong direction. It's okay.
Yeah.
No, still a hole. Any closing questions for the team? Thank you, Councillor Scott.
Just in page 17 on risks, I just note that you have just talked about key contract escalations for 3 water renewals and roading maintenance are estimated to be between 16% and 20%. Do we budget for that? Do we allocate for those cost increases, or are you giving me a warning? And do you reckon that includes construction?
Which page?
217.
Oh, 217.
15, risks, number 3. So I just wondered, do we prepare for those increases, or are you going to in your reforecast? And just a general question, do you think that's across construction as well? Because you've only highlighted 2 of those areas.
So we are talking about 15.3, the water services side of things, yeah. Are there other considerations?
We're estimating...
Escalations,
yeah. Have we budgeted for that?
Yeah. No, we haven't budgeted for that. Yeah, but we are managing those costs as well as we can. We are still getting very competitive prices out there from tendering, which is encouraging. Yeah, so I think that as supply becomes more freer, the costs are reducing. So.
Alrighty, further questions, or someone happy to move that? Councillor Parker, thank you. Councillor Pye, thanks team. Put motion, all those in favour please say aye. Against, carried. Awesome, thank you.